Hey, I'm strummerdood or matter, whatever, I don't know. So one of the big talking points that came from this year's GDC was that plot was overrated in games. It came from a talk on the 3x structure and how the teachings of Sid Field don't necessarily adhere to the limitations of video games. Well, as one of the story gamers that Riot's Tom Abernathy and Microsoft's Richard Rouse III refer to, I have some thoughts on the matter, surprisingly.
Misconceptions abound when discussing plot structure, likely because its elementary school definition simplifies its abstract nature. During their GDC talk, Abernathy and Rouse suggested abandoning plot structure in favor of characters and setting. But plot intrinsically serves to whittle baseline caricatures into unique people by throwing them into the unknown, forcing them to adapt to an unfamiliar situation, like applying pressure to coal to form a diamond. In many ways, story is a contained, discernible model of evolution. Papers, Please tosses the protagonist into forced labor, a position where they see dehumanizing acts by their government. The game finds tension in offering the player choice as they operate under a sensitive timetable that influences their thin income. The active decision-making helps illustrate the priorities of the protagonist, ultimately sealing their fate in one of 30 ways. Think of plot as the invisible hand of the storyteller, crafting character, setting, theme, ideally everything with this building block. Community's Dan Harmon uses a circle for his process, but the concept remains the same. Like the universe and everything in it, story and its elements go through cycles of change.
Think of a simple joke. It builds up to a punchline that flips everything before it on its head, eliciting an emotional response through laughter. Same goes for a scene bookended by a reversal. Something changes. Could be anything from a value, a motivation, an attitude, or something more physical, which is the case in many games.
Barring yourself into a safe room as you watch your team get mutilated by a horde ends an act of Left 4 Dead. Acing a team at Baron to take the lead represents a major reversal of fortunes in a game of League of Legends. Getting to the end of World 1-4 only to be told that your princess is in another castle is a complete mindfuck. These narrative cells build into scenes, scenes into sequences, and sequences into acts, ideally delivering increased impact with each step. Writers aren't limited to 3 acts just because Sid Field wrote a book in 1979. I mean, come on, it's pretty well known that Bill Shakespeare more often than not wrote in 5 acts, as does Quentin Tarantino, and he literally informs you of an act break. Scene composition and incorporating multiple acts stems from the greatest sin of storytelling, wasting the audience's time. Aristotle wrote about it in Poetics after his ass fell asleep watching some shit play.
Good command of plot structure eliminates fat and gives direction to the totality of story. In gaming, that includes gameplay.
Generally, if a mission doesn't advance or add anything to the overall narrative, the gameplay ends up just as compelling. Structure doesn't have to be mapped out this way. South Park's Trey Parker and Matt Stone make it a goal to transition between scenes with the words but or therefore, creating a consistent rhythm between events.
We can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words and then belong between those beats, you're and there's so many scripts we read from new writers and things that we see.
God, I see movies.
You
see movies that you're just watching. It's like this happened, and then this happens, and then this happens. That's when you're in a movie, just going, "What the f am I watching this movie for?" Just like this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. That's not a movie, you know. That's not a story.
The tenets of story structure apply to gameplay. Mechanics build upon themselves. A chasm impedes your progress, but you can jump. Therefore, jump the chasm. But a new chasm is far wider. Therefore, get a running start before jumping. Nonlinear storytelling is intriguing in this regard. Players experience a story at their own pace. Abernathy and Rouse saw this as a weakness to structure, pointing to Skyrim's low completion numbers. They put the onus on the player for abandoning the story to mindlessly kill mud crabs for 3 hours. So because gamers don't care about the main quest of Skyrim, designers just don't need to worry about endings and they can just completely forget about that whole Mass Effect 3 thing. But why should players care about the main quest when it doesn't offer unique choices to flesh out the character they're role-playing? And why waste an hour on a fetch quest when you can get the same amount of satisfaction by completing a 15-minute side quest comprised of the same gameplay? If the gamer wants something more than the minuscule shot of dopamine from small quests, they'll look for something different, something more substantial. Unfortunately, many game designers just don't trust in a player's intuition, even though humans have a biological imperative for story. It's in our DNA. We thirst and seek it out, and if ever there was a reason to remake The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, it'd be to illustrate this very principle. Plot structure impacts every facet of the game, helping to create the most fully realized Link, overworld, antagonist, and gameplay mechanic in the series. And it has nothing to do with the goddamn timeline, so kudos for that. The inciting incident occurs 5 minutes into the game, followed by an amazing first act that concludes with a major reversal of fortunes, motivation, and values, as well as the physical boost that comes with transforming back into a human. The Bomber's quest early on makes it clear that in order to stop the Skull Kid, Link will need the help of Terminus citizens. Whether a side quest or the main quest, Link involves himself in people's lives 3 days prior to their destruction. Thematically, Link's new friendships show the worth and good in Terminus citizens, giving him a more dynamic reason to stay. Not the contrived, with great power comes great responsibility. Players experience these stories via completely different gameplay styles. The social puzzles and minigames of optional side quests, and the complex traditional dungeons of the main story. And if they want to dick around and search for hard pieces, that option is available as well. Their time spent equals out to the amount of satisfaction they get, allowing them to naturally pace out the game for themselves. And they've got good reason to. Both give something mechanical that helps with the main story. Dungeons reward items and transformations, and side quests reward the masks that are later traded for the ultimate weapon against the Majora's Mask. Then you've got the Skull Kid, a fantastic antagonist who begins his quest not unlike Link, searching for a friend. The late plot reversal reveals the Majora's Mask simply corrupted the weak and angry Skull Kid. Upon defeating the sentient being, we see the people of Termina realizing their lives, but we also have Skull Kid finally finding the friendship in Link.
That you can tackle stories out of order matters little in this case.
In the Stanley Parable, every path taken by the player leads to new revelations that shed light on certain aspects of the world, characters, and theme. The non-linear style plays into the development of the narrative. Same goes for Majora's Mask, where every quest further fleshes out Termina, Link, and the citizens. If you haven't seen Game Theory's Majora's Mask video, they've got a different interpretation of the story, but the ideas I've discussed still very much apply to their analysis of Link's transformation. That we both came away with different views of a tightly structured narrative shows deft handling on Nintendo's part that I don't see much in many open world titles, or hell, most modern AAA games. You know why we don't often see it? Well, at least we agree on something.